Is the increase in the cost of buying quilting fabric stopping you completing some beautiful quilts? Have you projects in mind or partly completed and find that you've run out of money? If you have, there are some tips in this video that might help you continue with the wonderful hobby of quilting. Hello again, my name's Diane and I design and make patchwork quilts. And today I'd like to talk to you about finishing quilts on a very tight budget. And if that's something that might be of interest to you, please continue watching. Well, I'm not the font of all knowledge when it comes to quilts and all things quilty. However, I did reach out to the quilting community and I asked if you have any ideas that you'd like to share with the rest of us about how to finish quilts, about quilt tops, quilt battings, quilt backings, and you have replied. And so this video is sharing that knowledge, and there might be some things in there that you find useful that can help you carry on with this increasingly expensive hobby. And it's not just us quilters that are struggling at the moment. I watched quite a sad video the other day with Stephanie from Quilts Addicts Anonymous, and she was talking about slimlining her business. She blamed inflation and the rising costs of everything has just made it impossible to continue her business as it is. And she's selling off a lot of fabrics. I mean, there are bargains to be had if you're in America up until the third weekend of September. But it's not just you that are finding it difficult. Don't feel embarrassed if you can't buy into the fabric designers' latest designs that they put out there. Don't let that stop you making a beautiful quilt. There were plenty of other ways. Before we start, I'd just like to share with you a video I watched the other day by Pat Sloan, and she was offering 5 tips of how to keep your quilting under control. Well, hand on heart, I don't have UFOs. I can't live with the guilt. There's no right way or wrong way. I'm not judging anyone, but I can't get to sleep at night knowing there's a UFO in the cupboard. It calls to me, finish me. It's just the guilt. I have to get it finished. But what I found really interesting about this video was it was her earnest style. She was saying quilting is a lifestyle, and she said it was part of her heart and part of her soul, and she thought that people who watched her channel are kindred spirits. Well, I'd class myself as a kindred spirit because it is part of me. It's deeper than just a surface hobby. I know other people who have passions will claim that it's part of their heart and soul as well. So I'm not putting a hierarchy of hobbies here, but it is part of us. And it's a bit upsetting when you can't continue with something you love because the cost of it is prohibitive. And she'd said towards the end of her video that quilting is our life and we want it to be fun and enjoyable. And I'd just like to add to that, affordable, because there are people that are leaving this hobby now, this wonderful, wonderful hobby, because they just can't afford it. And so in this video, I'm hoping that we'll be able to share some tips if things are a little bit tight at the moment to keep on going until better times come. And I just want to offer a word of caution here. This is from Janine. Janine wrote in and she said, I decided to quit quilting for a while and gave away large bunches of fabric. Well, you know what's going to happen next, don't you? She said, I tried to get away from quilting and just couldn't. So now she's given away the vast majority of her stash and she's starting again. So if you are compelled to stop for whatever reason, Janine never said why, and if you are, just think about what you're going to do with your fabric. It is very noble of you to give it all away, and there'll be lots of people more than willing to take it off your hands. However, you never know when you might need to come back. So ask friends, ask family if they'll store it for you. If you need to get it out of the house for a while, ask someone else if they'll look after it before you completely make the break. And Janine also mentioned actually about men's shirts. So when I was asking about alternatives to quilting cotton, lots of people mentioned using extra large sizes of men's shirts bought from charity shops or thrift shops. Freddie, Lorraine, Karen, Kimberly, Kim, Janine, Catty Bob. But she mentioned, Janine, that the shirts in the thrift shops now, they're getting expensive. They're $5 at least, good quality shirts. I don't think I'm going to add anything else about using men's extra large size shirts, because there's a YouTuber out there, Kathy Martin, on Catbird Quilts, and she will tell you everything you need to know. So let's have a look and see what else we can think of to use. So if we're going down the route of procuring fabrics other than quilting cottons, just think of the antique quilts that you've seen and the fabric they've put in those. The G's Ben's quilts, I mean, anything is up for grabs really. In the lightweight fabrics, you've got cotton tea towels, handkerchiefs, lightweight curtains, duvets, sheets. In the heavier weights, you've got jeans, flannel shirts. The wood burning warrior is new to our community, and she's raiding her husband's wardrobes at the moment. I'm not sure when you'll notice, but she's having his jeans and shirts by the sound of it. I mean, there's wool trousers you can use, wool skirts, t-shirts, anything you can get a needle into you can use. I'd just be a little bit cautious of using similar weights together. You can reinforce thinner fabrics. For me, I just like to use similar weights because of the trouble I have with the needle. So if I've got a heavier weight and a lighter weight together, I've got the problem then of either breaking a needle if it's too thin, or making holes in lighter fabric if you've gone for the heavier needle. Apart from that, anything goes. So now we've made our beautiful flimsy and we're ready to go. So what do we use for the batting? Freddie wrote in and she said that she's used flannel sheets, but a word of caution, she said wash them first. Wash the flannel sheets before you put it inside due to shrinkage, because she found out the hard way. So we don't want that to happen. So this is why we're sharing. So if you've got older flannel sheets or older cotton sheets, it'll be all right. If you want a lightweight quilt, they can go inside. I've used a woolen blanket before. I have used a dog blanket. Actually, I've used a number of dog blankets. When my poor old Archie died, I couldn't bear to part with his blankets, and so I made a quilt. And they went in the quilt. And it was really warm. It was huge. In fact, it was so huge that when it wasn't in use, I stored it in the garage. Unfortunately, a mice found it and loved it. So that one's no longer with us. But that was really lovely and something to think about if you've got something that's well used. So if we're not going to go down the route of using a commercially made quilt batting, again, anything could be up for grabs. I find myself walking around DIY shops and looking at 100% cotton dust sheets, and I'm just thinking it's perfectly fine to go inside a quilt. They're quite heavy, but I mean, give it a good wash. And I've been looking at some of my bathroom towels. There's an odd thread cord and they're looking a little bit tatty. They are 100% cotton, Egyptian cotton towels. And I just keep thinking, I'm sure they must have a life in them. It would be a heavy batting, but again, it wouldn't shrink. If any of you have used a cotton towels as batting before, let us know. See how you've got on with that. So I think I'd only have 3 rules about using alternative batting. I'd make sure that the colour wouldn't run. I'd make sure it was a breathable fabric, and I'd make sure that it wouldn't show through the quilt cover. Apart from that, anything might go. So of course not all of your flimsies will need a batting, so if you're only going to make a coverlet, so you're just going to have the 2 layers, then you forget about the middle one completely. And I use coverlets if I want a lightweight summer throw to go over my bed. The Caroline quilt that I just recently made, technically Caroline coverlet, that's on my bed at the moment. So there's just a flimsy and a white sheet on the back, and it's perfect for the summer. When it's hot, just provides enough warmth. Perfectly fine. Really lovely. Love that. And I also have a log cabin throw, which is also a coverlet that has a duvet cover on the back of that. And that's on the sofa at the moment, and that's just to protect it in the summer from the being hot and sticky. It's a leather sofa. I also made, actually, just remembered, also made another coverlet I've still got it as a picnic blanket. I'll have a look and see if I can find that. And that was, somebody bought me one of these polyester throws, a silky one, and I used it for a while. It was a gift, but it kept sliding off the bed. So I put another cover on the top and I use that as a picnic blanket, and that is fabulous as a picnic blanket because it's already thinly quilted, and then with a heavier piece top, it's really nice. Washes and dries really well. So this is my picnic blanket with a polyester throw underneath. So it's nice and bright and colourful. It's a variation of the ocean wave. So all scraps. And then the backing was a polyester throw. Like I say, it kept slipping off the bed and it drove me crazy. That's another useful way of creating a coverlet stroke quilt. So that's something else to bear in mind. So let's get on to the backing of a quilt. I really love a pieced backing. If I've got leftover bits of fabric from the front that I know I won't be using again, or there's not enough, I like to put them in the back. And sometimes if there's odd blocks, I use those in the back of a quilt. These two children's quilt are both examples of how I've used a pieced border. So the rocket quilt has lots of alien or space themed blocks that I've just pieced together log cabin style to create an interesting border, and then I used some cheaper lemon fabric on the outside. And this quilt is my Tuesday quilt. Tuesday's child is full of grace. And I made a series of 7 quilts, one for each day of the week. And as you can see, there's some bold designs there, and each of those designs had a meaning, and I took that from Alias Grace, Margaret Atwood's book, and I'll show you the back. So again, this is a pieced back, and I used some of the ochre or the mustard fabric that I used on the front, and then I just used some floral, and I included that and a soft lemon. But I think that's a really interesting back, quite contemporary. And this quilt is my Sabbath quilt. The child that was born on the Sabbath day is bonny and blithe and good and gay. And the back of this one is cream. I didn't want anything too colourful, don't want anything showing through to the front, but I did have some small pieces of rainbow fabric, and so I put those together in a little montage. And Orla wrote in, and she mentioned making double-sided quilts, so there won't be a top and a back really, they're both equal, like 2A sides of a record. And the idea of creating quilts like that, she think would be multi-changeable. So especially if you've got a young child and you might put, say, I don't know, a fairy scene on one side, an underwater scene on another. It could be that they are seasonal. You might have spring and then summer on the other sides. So that is a really nice thing to do. Of course, it's double the costs, but not necessarily. It depends where you're getting your fabric from. But there's a lot of work to go into that. The only thing that would put me off doing anything like that is because I quilt on my small domestic machine, you're going to have a lot of seams. So there'll be a lot of weight because every seam you have, there's a ½ inch extra fabric in that particular area. So you have to think of the weight. And also when you're pushing that amount of fabric and that weight through a small domestic machine, your needle is going to be hitting seams from the top and seams below. So that might, for me, be an issue. I wouldn't say definitely not. I think in principle it's lovely. So that's worth bearing in mind, I think. You'd only have one lot of batting and 2 fronts. And this last quilt I've used upcycled materials, so there are some fat quarters included. It's in the antique lace design, but most of the front is a very soft cotton curtain that I got from a charity shop. Of course I washed it first. So it has a small binding and now a border, and I'll show you the back. So the back of the antique lace quilt is this beautiful pink floral pattern, and this was a brand new duvet I found in the charity shop. still in its package, but I washed it before I sewed with it because of the front being such a light colour. I didn't want to have the danger of any colour run. But it is so pretty and so soft, and all are mentioned making double-sided quilts. Well, this one is definitely a quilt that you can use on either side. So again, Kimberly, Lorraine, Catty Bob, Karen, Freddie, all recommended as well using good quality cotton sheets or duvets, brand new at bargain prices, or from thrift shops or charity shops. My favourite way of making a backing is either with a new bargain duvet or a new sheet. But that's my favourite way because you get a whole piece, so I'm not piecing, I'm not having to join fabric together. Normally it's big enough to make one single cover for the back of a quilt, and it's a little bit lighter. And I'll show you the bargains that I bought today. So I visited Pondon Home Interiors, and they have got an online shop. So I bought 2 single sheets. So this one is Egyptian cotton, extra deep, and it is 200 thread count, and that had been reduced to £5, and that's a really lovely yellow. It's a yellow ochre, so I'll definitely use that one. And a single cream sheet, also reduced to £5, and that again is Egyptian cotton, and that's a 200 thread count. And then I bought a king size this time, extra deep. This one is a fitted sheet. It's in a duck egg, again 200 thread count, Egyptian cotton. It's a lovely colour, lovely soft blue. And then the last one I bought was a 300 thread count, and again that one is a luxurious 100% cotton, and that one also had been reduced to £5, and that's a very soft grey. So that's 4 good size backing sheets for 4 different projects. I'll wash them before I use them, and they'll be hard wearing, perfectly fine when they're quilted. If you're thinking about binding a quilt, I'm not a lover of fancy bindings on a quilt. It's not that I don't enjoy looking at them, I just don't particularly enjoy doing them. So I tend to use a self-binding method where you bring the back to the front, and I use that most times. Unless I'm asked to put a traditional binding on, I'll use that one. That's my go-to. And I used that lovely golden ochre sheet to back this Christmas tree wall hanging or door hanging, and if you look closely you'll see that it's self-binding, so the gold comes from the back to the front. So it's really lovely quality cotton, and there's lots of fabric left over, so I may piece it to go into the back of another quilt, or even use it for the foot surface because it's such nice quality. But I think we've covered now the tops, the batting, the backing and the binding just. So I think that's now all of our quilts covered. Can't think of anything else now really. I think that's all the ways I know of saving money when we're carrying on doing our lovely hobbies. I don't want to keep saying things that other people have said. So unless there's anything else that you think we need to share, I'll close now, and this will probably be the end of the quilting on a budget videos. So thanks for watching everybody, thanks for sharing all your ideas, and if you're thinking of just stepping back, remember Janine, you know, it's not always easy to give up this passion. Take care, bye, thanks for watching.